All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating new study that explores a novel at-home therapy for kids with autism spectrum disorder. We're going to break down the science, how they ran the study, and what these really promising results might mean. Okay, so let's just dive right in. The big question these researchers were chasing is this: could a special kind of light therapy actually help ease some of the toughest daily challenges of autism? And look, to really get why this research matters, you've got to start with this number. A staggering 80% of kids and teens with ASD struggle with major sleep problems. Yeah, this isn't just a minor thing, it's a massive challenge for so many families. Right, and we're not just talking about a kid being a little tired. The lack of sleep often kicks off this tough snowballing cycle for the whole family, and that's exactly what these researchers wanted to tackle. So here's the deal. It's really this two-pronged problem. First, when a child isn't sleeping well, their behavioral challenges, things like social inflexibility or not complying with requests, can get a lot more intense. And at the same time, you've got parents who are just running on empty, dealing with way more stress. You can see how it creates this powerful, draining feedback loop. So how on earth could light help with any of this? Well, the researchers started with this really fascinating idea that connects what's going on in the gut with what's happening up in the brain. Okay, so the therapy itself is called Photobiomodulation, or PBM for short. I know it's a mouthful, but the idea is actually pretty simple. You use specific wavelengths of light to basically give your cells a boost, helping to reduce things like inflammation. And this is where it all comes together. The theory goes something like this. An imbalance in gut bacteria can stir up inflammation down there, and through this pathway they call the gut-brain axis, that inflammation can actually travel up to the brain. So the big idea, the intervention, was to use this PBM light therapy on both the belly and the head to try and calm that inflammation at both ends of the highway. Okay, great theory, right? But how do you actually test it? Well, they designed a study specifically to see if this whole gut-brain idea would hold up in the real world, at home with actual families. So they got 42 kids with ASD, around 11 years old on average, and they kept it super practical. Families got a PBM device to use at home for guided sessions, twice a day on both the head and the abdomen. Then, to see what was happening, parents filled out a couple of key surveys. And they were tracking two really specific things. First, they used the HSQ ASD questionnaire. That's basically to see how severe the child's challenging behaviors were. And second, they used something called the APSI, which, you guessed it, measures the specific kinds of stress that parents of children with autism often experience. All right, so the study runs its course. They collect all the surveys, they crunch the numbers, and what they found? Well, it was pretty striking. The first huge takeaway, and this is a direct quote from their analysis, was that all the changes they saw were reductions. The scores for negative behaviors, the scores for parental stress, everything was moving in the right direction. That's exactly what you want to see. But what's really wild is just how big those reductions were. On the behavior survey, scores for things like social inflexibility absolutely plummeted. We're talking an average drop of 14 to 17 points. I mean, that is a huge change in a clinical setting. And get this, the impact on parents was just as big. Their stress scores dropped by an average of 13.5 points by the end of the study. That is a serious decrease in reported stress. When you add it all up, the total drop in the severity of these challenging behaviors was almost 33 points. Just think about what that means for a family's day-to-day life. That's a massive shift. And here's the really important part. This wasn't just a fluke. The stats wizards ran the numbers, and the results were what they call highly significant. That basically means there's almost no way these improvements happened by pure chance. Okay, so those numbers are impressive on their own, for sure. But to really see just how big a deal this might be, you have to put it into context with other research. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. So the researchers put their results side by side with a previous study by a researcher named Palanti, and wow, just look at this. The old study saw a tiny 0.37-point drop in behavior issues over 6 months. This new study, a 2.24-point drop in just 1 month. For parental stress, the old study saw a tiny drop that wasn't even significant. This new one, a massive 7.1-point drop in a month. We're talking results that are way bigger in a fraction of the time. So what gives? Why the huge difference? Well, it really seems to boil down to how they did it. They used a much more powerful dose of light, They hit both the head and the abdomen to tackle that whole gut-brain connection, and they had families do it twice a day. It looks like that three-part combo is the secret sauce. So, where does this all leave us? Well, of course, more research is always a good thing, but if these results can be repeated, we could be looking at a really important, accessible new tool for families navigating the challenges of autism. It's a promising new light, literally and figuratively.